Abhay, it's ready now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. For all the first timers who joining this class is live streamed on YouTube. You can get the link on your WhatsApp group so that if you miss the class, you can see it. Again, as there are certain things that I keep repeating every class. These are academic and scholarly pursuits in the sense that these are perspectives. Do not go through this classes or academics in terms of right, wrong, good, bad. These are all perspectives based on individual scholars. Besides that, any moment of time you need any help, you can WhatsApp your colleagues, your teachers. I'm unfortunately not on WhatsApp. I'm on Signal and Telegram. In case you want to contact me, I can give you my Signal number, Signal or Telegram. And in case you want the PPT, you can send me a message on my email ID. Uh, it's duck.com. Okay. Okay, I think without much ado, let's start. We have been talking about identity since the last couple of lectures. Also, another thing that I will repeat is the fact that I pick up this presentation from your SLM self-learning module. Though at many moments of time, if I feel your SLM is kind of not self-explanatory. I pick up some information. I also pick up some case studies from outside so that at the end of the day, if you read your SLM and go through this PPT, more often than not, you should be pretty much clear about the subject. At least I try my best to do that. And as I said, for the last two units, we have been talking about identities. So let's look at another identity today, which is the caste identity. And the whole topic of caste is a very interesting, extremely contentious, and at the same time, it falls in the realm of sociology. Again, this migration and diaspora studies is a very interesting subject because it's an interdisciplinary subject where you will have things about sociology, psychology, anthropology, media, and so on and so forth. So, in case when you go through it, you'll find something very interesting. So, the most interesting part of the caste identity, in fact, we have been talking about identity and how human beings always work with multiple identities. Identities are extremely fluid. Identity is required for certain amount of moving. The interesting part of caste is that caste, the word caste itself is not an Indian word. So more often than not, the whole concept of the religion Hinduism or the Hindu aspect was basically division of society into varna and jatis. But somewhere down the line, the concept of caste came in, and so forth. We will see how the caste became the term to be used and not varnas and jatis. And again, for people who are joining for the first time during the PPT, you can stop me at any moment of time by either interrupting or raising a hand or putting it on the chat mode to either ask a question or to share some insight that you have. So we will not go by this, typical classroom scenario that you are supposed to keep quiet, supposed to not ask questions only at the end of the class. No, it is it's a free format in the sense that we are trying to share information and knowledge with each other, and a lot of us, when we collectively share, tend to get a better perspective of things. Okay, so before I start, I picked up this news item on my social media timeline. It's a very sorry, it's a very interesting thing because we have been talking about economic consideration in terms of migration. we look at diaspora, but here we have an internal migration. So this news is from Trivandrum and slide not moving. Hang on. Is it moving now? Are you able to see a slide move?
No, it's the same. Migration diaspora theory and methodology.
Okay, hang on. Let me start again. Thank you for the feedback. Uh, Technology always has a mind of its own. I don't know why, but it does have. So, is the slide moved now? Can you
No,
see a
sir. No.
Migration diaspora, same. Block 1, unit 57. First.
you're not seeing it move now?
Not yet, sir.
Again, as I said, the technology has a mind of its own. Why is it not moving? What did I do wrong? Optimize for okay. Can you see a new slide now?
Yes, sir.
Can you see this news item on
Yes,
Kerala?
sir.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So we have been talking about diaspora and we have been talking about the economic considerations of diaspora. Okay, perfect. Thanks. So this was a news item from a Kerala newspaper from Thiruvananthapuram. And they are talking about if the migrants move to give votes, this is the loss which is likely going to be there. And there's a very interesting subcategory in this news item is of Assam. This NCR is wrong. It is basically NPR, National Population Register, National Citizenship Register that they're talking about. So a lot of Assamese migrants, because of the fear of their names getting cut out, are leaving their workplace in Kerala and going home to vote. So you see how politics and especially identity politics and policies affect people. And the same thing would happen in terms of when people are migrating to, let's say, different countries. They migrate to the West, they migrate to US. And I typically keep giving example of US, which is a very interesting case because the whole US as a country is comprised of migrants or immigrants, and yet there is this whole politics around immigrants. And the most interesting part of this argument is the fact that US cannot do without immigrants because their whole economy will collapse. So if you see their whole high tech or the IT economy works out of migrants from China and India. The lower level jobs works from Mexico and Latin America, and yet there is this identity politics about immigrants. So this was a very interesting item I picked up. I thought, let me share it to you, even though it didn't, gel in with the caste part. So the objective is to explain the relation between diaspora and caste, and traditional caste system is changing. So caste system hierarchy divides the society. Indian migrate with their caste pattern. And again, we were talking about when we were talking about the religious identity last time or the ethnic identity. Think about the fact that every time one moves, one carries oneself in terms of their identities, in terms of what you like, what you dislike, to wherever you go. Caste plays a vital role in diaspora studies. And let's look at the term caste, derived from a Portuguese word. Race, lineage, breed, original, not an Indian word, widely used. Now it's widely used as English and Indian languages, closely translated to Varna and Jati. So caste, the Varna and Jati has been replaced by caste. In fact, during my growing up time, and today also, there has been a lot of debates where there are some people who claim that the caste does not exist in metropolitan cities, caste does not exist in private sector, in high tech industries. But as more and more research is happening, we are seeing caste does exist. It does have a play. In fact, in US today, there has been a major debate in terms of caste because Indians carry their caste along with it and, again, do practices of the caste there itself. Hang on, somebody has written a The book A House for Mr. Biswas by Naipaul also discusses the issue of caste in Indian diaspora and Caribbean. Absolutely. So also remember the fact that over a period of time, as Indians migrated, they carried their, their religion, their caste, their, basic culture, and then they replicated that in wherever they went. In fact, I have a case study, a paper written by a Dalit scholar from South Africa. I'll present that. Origins in ancient India, transformed by various ruling elite. Again, it has been, everything. There is nothing in a society which is stationary. Everything keeps on moving. At any moment of time, if anybody tells you that things are stationary, things are never stationary. No society is stationary, no culture is stationary, no identity is stationary, especially in the aftermath of the collapse of Mughal Empire and establishment of British Raj. And there was a reason why these castes, became silos in terms of rigid structures after the Mughal Empire collapsed and the British Raj came in. There are three scholars who have written three books where they have, said the same thing in terms of how it was transformed. There are about 3,000 castes, 25,000 subcastes. Caste is dictated almost every aspect of Hindu religion and social life. And we shall also see that, remember, a large majority of Indians who converted into other religions carried their caste along. So, in spite of the fact that the religion, and interestingly, each religion talks about equality of human beings, blah, blah, blah. And yet, each religion practices whatever they were practicing either in Hinduism or they carried on the remnants or amalgamated into other things. Rural communities have long been arranged in basis of caste. System bestows privilege to the upper caste while sanctioning repression on the lower caste by privileged groups. This is a basic general fact. So anthropologist Susan Bailey writes that until well into the colonial period, much of the subcontinent was still populated. Formal distinction was only limited to importance, even in the part of so-called Hindu heartland. The institution of belief, which were all described as elements of traditional caste, was only taking shape in the 18th century. So this was not ordained, historically. This developed over a period of time. There were multiple factors why a thing develops. Always also remember, nothing is deterministic by one factor. At any moment of time, for example, a lot of people say technology does this. That is a very deterministic way of saying something. It does no particular factor, one particular factor works. In fact, it's doubtful to say that caste had much significance or relevance in society before the British made India's defining social feature. So, in fact, even during the continued rules of the Turks, the Mughals, and various people, the caste system was not as entrenched as what happened during the British. And there was a reason why this happened. The reason was the social identities were malleable, slaves and menials and became king, farmers became soldiers. Fundamental reimagination of social identity in pre-colonial India. The colonizers invented or constructed Indian social identities during categories of convenience. So what Britishers did was, for the convenience of governing India, they brought out these set of castes with so that a common law could be applied for governance. So for their own convenience, the caste structure became hardened. So very large, complex, regional, diverse system of faiths and social identities was.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So, sir, what you are saying that whatever caste system were existing prior to British,
Yes.
so you are accepting that it was rampant before that, but what you are saying that they further strengthened it so that it helps in the governance, right?
So, Manish, as per research and as per scholars who have done work on caste system, they were saying that, see, as I said, nothing evolves suddenly.
That's true.
It didn't happen that one day people got up and said we are all divided into castes. No, that would not have happened. So inevitably, if you see how the Hindus society was divided, they were divided into varnas and jatis. So there were four predominant varnas, which were the Brahmins, Kshatriyas,
Caste society.
Vaishyas, and Shudras. And then there were the non-varnas, which were the outcast, which were outside the the varna system. And then these varnas were subdivided into jatis. Okay, so obviously there was a lot of malleability in the way things were moving. It was not that say for example Brahmins, they always say that Brahmins, they have to prove themselves to be Brahmins, and these identities were malleable and could move into each other. But with the coming of Britishers and their governance way, they started documenting, categorizing, and in that particular case, people saw a particular, various people looked at the way that this was a great way to take advantage of changing caste, or changing those varna systems, or moving into a higher privilege system. Remember, the whole system of any religion, specifically Hinduism, works on purity and pollution. So this is the way they were able to move around in terms of their occupation, in terms of a social hierarchy. Manish?
My understanding is that as far as the Britishers are concerned, like their strategy was there that they just want to rule and take out the natural resources. So they did not interfere into the religious and social structure.
Manish, again, as I said, I am quoting various scholars as I have, and typically when I present, if I am making a statement, I pick up a scholar who has said that.
Okay.
I'm not a sociologist. So the people who have worked on it said that the Britishers, see, at the end of the day, you are absolutely right. The Britishers were colonizers. They were looking at colonizing. The taking of the resources, initially they came in for the gold and the spices, because remember, when the colonization of the world was happening, Europe was a very poor continent. India and China contributed the largest GDP in the world economy. In fact, because of the raw materials which British took from the colonies, including India, Europe was able to bring in its industrial revolution to the detriment of the colonies. Manish?
Yeah, that's true.
So when they did that, they did it for an administrative convenience. And when they did it for an administrative convenience, so let's look at the fact that the British did not understand the local dialect. So when they did not understand the local dialect, what would they do? They would go to somebody who's educated, or who has been educated outside, who is able to speak English or able to communicate with them. Correct? Now, inevitably, it's the same thing what happens today. Say, for example, a person from a city, when he or she goes to a rural area or a semi-rural area or a suburb, or interacts with a child or a person who is not from a metropolitan, we ask a particular question categorizing people in specific categories. And if a person, say for example, you ask a child, what do you want to be when you want to become bigger, when you want to become older? 3 out of the 4 children will say, I want to join the police, I want to join army, or I want to become a teacher. Why is that so? That's because of the fact, more often than not, everybody is conditioned to categorize. The children are conditioned to understand the fact, this is what the response the people who are asking want. And the people who are asking, if they say, I want to be a musician, you get those. Everybody becomes conditioned to that kind of an equation. So when the Britishers started doing an administrative convenience, they would have reached out to the educated. The educated, more often than not, were privileged or from the higher varna. The categorization was very easy to be done. Manish?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
But at the same time, I'm just countering myself. As I said, that their strategy was to colonize and rule, and their broader strategy, no, some little bit tweak they might have done, but they wanted to do not touch the religious and social structure. But at the same time, they played a crucial role in removing the sati pratha. That was a very audacious.
Okay. Now, Manish, you are entering into a lot many things together, but let's look at the fact, a very simple thing. Britishers introduced English education for an administrative convenience so that the Indians could give them good clerks, English speaking clerks, so that they could administratively govern the colony very easily. Now, always remember, wherever something is done, there are intended consequences and unintended consequences. The intended consequences of English speaking was India has a very large pool of English speaking people. Unintended consequences was, for example, Sanskrit went away because, and then English became a source for upward movement of lower castes. So there is a concept. See, now we are entering into the realm of sociology. There's a concept called westernization, where Western, identities or Western constructs are used for people to move, on a higher privilege. Also, the sati, the British did not want to touch the sati. It was basically the reformers in the Indian system who pushed, like Raja Ram Mohan Roy and others, who pushed them.
Yes, yes, yes.
And British wanted to, listen, at the end of the day, they were looking at how to govern with the least, and you are absolutely right, the least amount of, trying to fiddle around. Listen, how did the 1857 revolt happen? They brought in a new gun. The gun used grease, which was made from pig fat and cow fat. So, unintended consequences. So it's a very interesting thing how it goes about. Some other day, let's carry on with this presentation. Maybe if there is a thing at the end, we can talk about this. The conversion drive by missionary to justify. Pushpa, there were many, again, as I said, things did not happen in a single deterministic way. There were multiple things operating at the same time. Each had intended and unintended consequences. So today also, whenever you do something, you have always some intended and some unintended consequences. More often than not, we try and plan for the intended consequence, but we do not know the unintended consequence. We will discuss it out after we do this, because this is it's a quagmire in terms of a lot of ideas. Let's move on to this. So during the colonial period, starting 1830, 20th century, large group of Indians were recruited. So this is how the migration typically happened, recruited and indigent laborers to work in other Britain. Now here also, more often than not, the lower castes who were the laborers who used to go, but there was this interesting story of even there was some higher caste who would go with these ships, and they would make their food separately. Remember, the whole concept of religion and the varnas was purity and pollution. There was also other kinds of migrants, business traders. So, and remember, in the Hindu system of religion, crossing the sea was, losing your caste. It was generally told that as soon as you cross, you go out of, you cross the ocean, you are losing your caste. But that did not happen. People carried their caste and carried on. I will come to this paper. Abhay, I'm leaving. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Sada. Okay. Bye-bye. So after independence, there were several waves of migration. And remember, each wave which happens of migration, and this is, it's not just Indians across the world when people migrate. Each wave comes with a different set of conditions, culture, and more often than not, that there is a negotiation. The most recent wave of immigration to advanced countries, IT professionals, wide range of IT skills. So we have already spoken in earlier units how diaspora itself is not a monolith entity. It's not homogeneous. In fact, when Indian diaspora is subdivided into multiple identities based on language, based on states, there is a larger identity of nationality, but under that there are multiple identities. So a relationship of diaspora and caste, a couple of case studies. Say, for example, there was a Kangani system of labor, early 19th century, indentured, which went to Sri Lanka and Malaysia, recruited by Kangani. And inevitably, this Kangani were the guys who got their own Jat Bhais or their own brothers or relatives to work. Recruited migrants from South India, Tamil majority area by a network of friends, family. responsible for supervision of labor. And inevitably, who will they get? People of identical caste, jati, varna, whatever, identical culture. And these people will go and set up their own system out there. So there is this, there is this paper by this African scholar Suraj Yengde. Suraj Yengde is currently at Harvard University, Harvard Kennedy School, studied on 4 continents. He's a PhD holder from African University of Johannesburg. So he's written this paper about caste among Indian diaspora in Africa. So I got this paper and I said it's available on the net, so you can search for it. Caste identity is central in many ways in which Indians overseas organize their society. One of the identities in which they organize. So there's a national identity, there's a religious identity, there's an ethnic identity. Then, of course, there are the states identity, the Andhrites, the Telugus, the Malayalis, the Punjabis, the Gujaratis. And then there is this caste. Migration of Indians meant that there are clustered caste groups among modern Indian diaspora in Africa, North America, Europe. Migration in Africa was a part of the broader expansion by mobility of Indian labor and trade to Africa. And again, as I was talking about, it does not happen in a single particular way. There is no deterministic way things work out. Caste consciousness is common among Indian diaspora worldwide. So is the practice of caste system. Changed form in new social and geographical context, but it has not been eliminated. As we have seen in the metropolitan cities, for all the high-tech industries, the private sector, the metropolitans, caste very much is existing. In fact, when I went out of Delhi for the first time, the first question they asked me was, what's your caste? Unfortunately, in my family, caste was never talked about. I was at loss. They looked at me as though I was crazy. Till the time I became smart. Majority of Indian diaspora in Africa still looks to marry within caste and endorses caste identity. And the most surprising part is they look at Indian matrimonial sites to find boys and girls for marriage. So in spite of the fact that they are not Indians, they currently the second generation would be Africans. Hang on. Usually people just assume hearing the Aisha, in fact, the surnames also are confusing because a particular surname in a state may be of a particular caste, but it might be of a different caste in another state. And that's what the diversity of India is crazy. I mean, that's what I keep when we keep talking about, diaspora and, the kind of identities. India is an amazing amalgam of multiple identities and diversity. So then there is something called.
Sorry, sir. No, I just wanted to just quickly add. Usually, whenever I've always heard when somebody asks you a name, and you just give them your first name, and they always insist on knowing your surname as well. And when you say your surname, they start thinking, and they're like, oh, okay. And then if they're because usually you don't realize that people are doing this, but like in my
all
case,
the time.
Yeah. Because in my case, people can't figure out what I am by hearing my surname. So they have to ask, like,
Correct.
oh, are you this? Are you that?
Correct.
And that's how I know that, people are looking out. They're actually hearing the surname. Maybe not actively. Maybe they're just so programmed to do it. But
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. In fact, they're actively seeking out to see what it is. Especially the older generation is definitely, the younger may not, but I've seen the youngsters also, inevitably that socialization happens in the families. So if there is a particular family where there is an active talk and socialization, the second generation will pick it up.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So he talks about the Ramgadiyas, often undermined and discriminated. Now, Sikhism is so much of a monolith religion, that's what the understanding is. But in Sikhism also there are there are divisions. The Ramgadiyas is one divisions are now part of the diaspora, having reclaimed their religious identities by taking care of economic opportunities. There are Gurdwaras in East Africa, United Kingdoms, continent Europe. So This is Sikhism. Marriages, religious sermons, charity functions are conducted by appointing features of the caste. Tanzania, largest city, the Ramgarhia Gurdwara, referred to as Indian temple that dissolved caste identity attached with the Jat Sikhs. So again, it was a very interesting thing that today in Indian Punjab, 32% of Punjabis are of the lower caste, and they have a separate set of structures, or separate a lot of places they have a separate place to pray. They are discriminated against, so that's the way it is. Then forget about the Sikhs. Look at the Muslims, the Bohra, Memons, Khoja group of Indian Muslims, predominantly of Gujarat, East and South Africa. Leaders of Ismail community do not disappear in the light of community succession. Marriage is often encouraged. So one of the ways how discrimination or the things are kept apart is marriages. So you are typically marrying within the group. In fact, growing up, you will why growing up? You will still hear pick up any newspaper and see the matrimonials, how they are divided in terms of caste, in terms of identities. It is, and these are all educated people.
So may I just
So
add something
yes,
for
please.
the previous slide? So Boras and Khojas are they are a religious kind of sect. They are not a caste as such.
Okay,
Yeah. So I don't know if that would apply here because they have very distinct beliefs.
correct.
And
But they
whereas
would they follow tenets of Islam?
yeah, they do, but they follow certain things differently.
Correct. Similarly, the Ramgarhiyas follow the tenets of Sikhism, but they follow it differently.
Yeah.
So
So there are many sects in Islam. The Boras and
correct,
the Khojas are a
correct,
subsect of Shia Islam.
correct. So that's what the idea of explaining this is, the fact that people, whenever a lot of people tend to stereotype religions, including Hinduism, because for a simple reason, any religion, any ethnicity are further subdivided into multiple identities. The idea of that is there. In fact, most of us do not either have the wherewithal or never have come across this kind of engagement to find out there are multiple sects, there are multiple ways, how they are different. There's a tremendous amount of diversity in the whole thing. And interestingly, these are the Indians who left India and now are in Africa, and they continue to follow their, their tenets or their specific culture, in spite of the fact they are no longer part of the Indian system. I am a Memon. Okay, we are not a sect as much group, then originate from a certain part. Okay, so Aisha is oh, that's the reason why Aisha people keep asking your surname and getting totally confused.
Exactly. Because I mean we have Sindhi roots basically. So our
Yes,
surnames are also like Sindhi and our language is also very similar to Sindhi.
yes,
So because of that, people always ask me, "Oh, are you Hindu? Are you Sindhi? Are you Muslim?" Because my name and my surname. So
understand. See,
yeah,
because again, as I said, most of us, most people in the ordinary course of life would not know, there are so many divisions. Can you guys just hold on for a second, please? Just a second. Sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. Suddenly a 4 year came in. Work from home is very difficult that way. Okay, so Aisha, you're absolutely right. So there are all these group. I think maybe one of these days we'll give you some time to tell a little bit more about Bohras, because or Memons. You are a Memon, sorry. So tell more about Memon in terms of their customs and culture and how do they differ. It might be an interesting read or
sure, sir.
listen.
Yeah, sure.
explains how food, clothing, marriage influence community formation. In East Africa, both Muslim and Hindu community. Uma, a South African historian, says trace the history of shoemaker community. And so the shoemaker, the name for that shoemaker today is a caste slur. And if you use that word, you can be booked for a caste slur. So I wrote a shoemaker. Her research on shoemakers in Cape Town revealed how the community is stigmatized as an outcast in India can make the best of opportunities, uh, uh, influence haunted the Hindu concept because they were considered to belong to a lower caste. Legal battle, they built a temple and dissociated from the, and yet they would fall under the Hindu fold. So what these people would do would either Sanskritize in terms of change their customs and rituals, or Westernize to get a higher status in the caste hierarchy. That's how all communities, including ones in India, do. So if you see, there is a guy very close to my house who works with the government, but from a lower caste, and you should see the way they now celebrate, and a rural person. So now you will see rural people celebrating birthdays, and the birthdays, the identities or the motives they use for birthdays in terms of balloons, in terms of music, in terms of cutting a cake, is trying to use this to acquire a higher status. And this is it's been happening over a period of time. Once they started getting wealthy, the cobblers in South Africa insisted they were Kshatriyas and not low caste cobblers. Has reproduced the argument proposed by Mochi Mandal. It was later dissolved to form the South African Caste Mahasabha. And this is a legit form. And in India, this has been happening over a period of time. So, this has been done by all the groups. They even changed their surnames and names. Not only that, they started collectively celebration of festivals. Absolutely. Absolutely. They even changed their surnames and names in pursuance of the customs followed by untouchables or low caste communities, adopted Rajput surnames. They also turned to vegetarianism, which again, this whole concept of vegetarianism and non-vegetarianism itself is a subject in itself. If you start, doing research on it, you'll be surprised. Please also understand, again, as I said, most of us, unless we are, invested in a particular subject and research, will never be able to get, did it continue to happen after Ambedkar rejection of Sanskrit? Listen, Pushpa, even among that, now, there is an active negotiation, it is happening. So in spite of the fact that a whole section of Dalits moved to shed their Hindu tag and move into Buddhism, you see among the Dalits also there are multiple subsects. For example, the UP politics of Bahujan Samaj Party and the other parties, you will see that there are, A versus B versus C. So in spite of all these things are happening together. So Ambedkarites also, remember, as I was telling you, our identities are multiple and identities are fluid, and we pick up identities based on the advantage we get by picking up one identity. Brahmins in the Eastern eat fish, meat, not chicken. Brahmins eat various places. They eat non-veg, veg. In fact, in our epics, there is a talk about meat eating. There are all kinds of things. That's the most interesting part. I do not know, but just for adding a bit of information, which you can Google and find out, there are 300 Ramayans with different, with different stories in it. So there are multiple ways how this, this diverse country is functioning. Okay, so they turn to vegetarianism, essentially a higher caste tradition. Bharati has written about purification process in East Africa among Indian low caste communities who became economically well after a few generations, uncomfortable about low caste status, high class status to those performing harmony. Also understand that a whole lot of low caste take advantage of the government's positive processes of reservations, but come out and do all kinds of higher caste, rituals to present themselves as a higher caste. So all these negotiations are also happening parallelly. Muslim groups like Darul Deoband established madrasas to propagate
Sir,
their version
this
of.
reservation is strengthening the caste identity or diluting it?
Uh, it's a very Manish.
I know it's a tough question.
Manish,
When you
so
ask like
Manish, it does not, it's not a very simple answer, because if I say that it, dilutes it, or at the end of the day, you need to understand why reservation came about. Reservation came out as a positive, encouragement to people who had been left out. Obviously, there is an unequal resource allocation to caste, with a higher caste getting better resources than the lower caste. So reservation was meant to be a way to. Now, interestingly, it's become a political football. Uh, More often than not, in India, still there are multiple castes which are in the lower caste categories who do not have the kind of resources and skill, and they need positive encouragement to to take advantage. But at the same time, what typically happens is the lower caste which have the muscle might or the financial might corner a lot of reservation. Manish, a larger debate is required, and unfortunately we are not having that debate. We get stuck into ideological corners which does not allow us to move beyond ideology. There is a larger debate it's open. Say, for example, in Delhi, one of the factors with the what the Delhi government and this new party said, that we will provide an equal education opportunity to all people, irrespective of caste, religion, creed, ethnicity, which also becomes a positive empowerment to everything if you get a uniform education. So all education, for example, in Delhi is free. There are multiple ways they are going about. So the money, this requires a larger debate actually. It's not as simple to say it is good or it's bad. Unfortunately, once you get stuck into ideological corners, then it becomes very difficult to argue. Manish?
okay, sir, I understand. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's move forward. Identity becomes stronger as Muslim leaders of Indian community participated in anti-government struggle. The African community has a different context to it, because one of the factors which influenced the African community was Gandhi, was the presence of Gandhi out there, and the work that Mahatma Gandhi did out there. There's a new trend in Western India where people from wealthy backgrounds or higher caste agitating to secure a lower caste category. See, inevitably, this also, Priyanka, this also happens because the government service is looked at as as something which should which is a gift, which is sort of a gift. So inevitably, it is something that they should get, and they typically say that why should, what this is typically getting stuck into the ideological thing. And this works well with identity politics, because inevitably then the politicians do not have any pressure to improve the education, health, and other aspects of the society. They would easily indulge in identity politics. It's the same thing what US and the West is doing in terms of anti-immigration identity politics. Rather than talk about the fact that the US and the West, especially the Europe, has colonized larger part of the world and taken utilities and sat in those countries for hundreds of years, and now should share the spoils. They are talking in terms of identity politics and immigration politics. Government job is stable, secure, while Abha, not anymore, but nevertheless, it still goes as a stereotype that government job is stable, you get a pension. government job is as unstable today as a private job. But again, these are certain things which is a notion. Say, for example, the concept of army and agniveers. There's a lot of unease or disquiet in terms of the agniveer scheme of the government. What is right, what is wrong, needs a larger debate. It's much more than what we can talk in a particular class, especially a caste class. Okay, so African, especially diaspora, Mahatma Gandhi was one major factor which affected all these communities who were working out there. Something similar happened in Africa. Leaders belonging to privileged caste groups dominated Indian politics, was considered sinful and a certain way of losing class. Described this many untouchable and lower class communities, along with a few Brahmins. So, irrespective of the fact that people would lose their caste status, there were upper caste people also who undertook this journey, as they could be traders, they could be as employees of the British Rajya or whatever it is. They did take this journey. The upper caste went on to become priests or teachers or clerks, while jobs requiring hard labor but distant. And they knew the fact that when they travel, they will lose their caste, but the caste remained, and then they went and practiced the same caste wherever they went. Hard caste indentured laborers regarded Africans as more acceptable than lower caste Indians. Something similar what happens, a lot of times, a lot of Indians look at white skin in a much more differential way than they would do their own, type of skin in terms of caste. So there are all these things which are happening parallelly. In one instance, an indentured labor of higher caste preferred an African woman to a lower caste Indian woman when it came to looking after his children. This I explained that the indentured gave wrong information about their caste because the authorities did not want Brahmin and Muslims and indentured labor. So again, you need to understand, typically whenever people do give wrong information, people use identities based on convenience, what is convenient to them. This was Pushpa, see, this is very reductionist when we call itself racist. People do it all the time. You'll be surprised, in one of the early units when we were talking about the European diaspora. Pushpa, you were not there, you are a newer student. European diaspora between Latin America, that is Brazil, and Europe, preferred to keep the citizenship based on where did they get the advantage. They came to Brazil or Argentina, I think Argentina, because Argentinians were paying more than what the Europeans were paying to these Europeans. So human beings do take advantage of the system. They game the system. There is nothing wrong about it. It's a human quality. And the same thing happened with Indians in terms of taking advantage. The younger generation of Indian are certain that caste is a part of life, are certain that caste is a part of their lives. Many Indians in South Africa subscribe to matrimonial websites in India, argue caste was not eliminated, it was just compromised. So it comes up in newer ways. That is what evolution of caste happens. Empirical evidence suggests consciousness exists. There's been little effort by Indian community to discuss caste issues. Again, unless we discuss things, how do we know what it is? Perhaps the one who can discuss it are not the ones who do want to discuss it, very much part of the caste system. Change from adopted and evolved identity through hybridization. Which is what happens. Rigid caste practices in India are not duplicated in Africa. Essence and spirit of caste persist. Indian diaspora in Africa condemn and distance itself from caste-ridden, poor, sexist, filthy, loud, and unequal India. However, the ideology of degraded inequality sustains in a different form. So it remains in a different form. So Valmiki community activist in UK once told, caste migrates with you. It's with you and your generations. Caste is everywhere. They have no idea of belonging and they improve there through their practices. So this is what it is. Another example of Sikhism and caste, Ravi Das is revered mostly by traditional leather workers. Large number of Gurdwara temples named after him in Canada, although Sikh ideology is against any kind of discrimination. Caste hierarchies is followed by upper caste Sikhs. Dalits in Gurdwara are discriminated, sidelined in management. Facing such discrimination, leather workers began to build their own gurdwaras. Educated Dalits proudly identified with their caste. Prejudice
So I
and
have a question.
tell me.
How do Sikhs, the upper caste Sikhs, recognize Dalit Sikhs? Like,
So, who's that? Aisha?
yes.
Aisha, there is a skin color. So you will see. So if you go to your wherever you stay, if you go to the market and if you see a locksmith on the pavement who's making keys, you will find these are Sikhs. These are darker colored Sikhs. They are, typically of lower caste.
Okay, so
I
but that's the only thing because anybody can become tan working in the sun.
I know there are specific parameters. And then, of course, remember, everybody knows everything in terms of the caste system through their surnames, through where you stay, through your mannerisms, through your food habits, etc., etc., etc. Aisha?
That makes sense. But sir, also I think in Sikhs, the men are supposed to be called Kumar and the women are supposed to be called Kaur or something, if I'm not wrong. Or
Oh,
Singh and Kaur, sorry, Singh and Kaur.
sing and chords. So remember in the sing and chords, it's like in Hindus by your surnames, certain again sing and kaur are the Sikh denomination. In between, there's a surname also. So, for example, if I was a Sikh, I would be Abhay Chawla Singh, and more often than not, I will hide the Chawla. I'll be Abhay Singh.
I think that's what they're supposed to do, right? Remove the like the caste
No,
surname and just put Singh and Kaur.
but they all carry on with their surnames.
Okay, sir.
It's like a lot of people from Bihar would use Kumar and Kumaris. They have a surname. Aisha?
Yeah, sir.
Okay. So, these are sociologically great research topics. So once you start, even in Jain community, the caste system is there. Absolutely, Pushpa. Buddhists, Jains. See, remember all these guys converted from Hinduism. The Varna Jati system was as ancient as the Vedic texts. So there was a certain amount of the Varna Jati system. The Varna Jati system primarily came from the Manusmriti, which is medieval, not the ancient times, but the medieval time. There was a tumult going on and all these things. Remember, everything happened for a particular reason. So if you start doing a little research, you will find out why things happen. Against the Dalit did not go down with the second generation, began to socialize separately. UK, they have their own place of worship called Bhavans. To escape controls of Shri Guru SGPC, Dalit want their control over their Bhavans. So Ajanta, professor of anthropology, compared to other nodes of South Asian diaspora in the US are the most highly educated and affluent. And this is largely because the vast majority of South Asians in US come from privileged caste background. So, this thing about merit versus mediocrity also is a misidentification, because inevitably when you are of a higher caste, person from a higher caste, you have the privilege, then you have the money, and then the merit comes in. It's a very interesting debate. Again, unfortunately, this debate is not happening enough. Unfortunately, today our mainstream media just does not talk about so many things. There are so many things which are happening, and unless they are discussed, they all become stereotypes or are swept under the carpet. Okay, summing up. Categorization people begins with an ascribed status, religion, caste, ethnicity. You get born into a religion, a caste, and ethnicity, and you ascribe to it. This categorization, certain norms to behave, cannot study diaspora without a caste system. Identity marker, people do not bodily migrate, they also migrate culturally. These elements lead to caste-based social exclusions. Rigid caste practices are not duplicated, the sense and spirit of caste persist. Okay, let me stop. If there is, let me put on my video. Hi guys, any question? So the idea was to give you a larger sense of the caste and how it continues in different forms with the diaspora community. the diaspora community, as I said, when you take your body, you carry all your culture along in terms of your thought process, in terms of your ideas, in terms of your socialization patterns. More often than not, the first generation remains rigid. The second generation, based on intermingling, changes a bit. After multiple generations, things might be different, but there are certain things which continue. And there's a very interesting story which was told to me by a friend of mine, a Kannadiga friend of mine, who was telling me about a household in his neighborhood where the family used to get up at 4 o'clock, tie the cat and sleep. So nobody could understand why they get up at 4 o'clock and tie the cat and sleep, till somebody did some research and found out that actually the family was a caste, a very religious caste, higher caste family, where they would get up before the sun rises, do their puja. But when they used to do their puja, the cat would come and drink the milk. So they started tying the cat before they did puja. Somewhere down the line, the puja stopped, but the tying of the cat continued. It's quite an interesting story, a very hilarious story. I don't know how much did he, extrapolate this story, but it's in a lot of places. I see a lot of rituals being done in terms of culture without really realizing why it is being done. It just carries on. Any question? Is there a
Abhay sir,
different?
Abhay sir,
Yes, Gurpreet, please tell me,
sir, one clarification. Our
please.
previous lecture, religious identity, and today's lecture about the caste identity, are both identities are overlapping too?
Gurpreet ji, point is you're a Sikh. So you have, let's say, a religious identity of Sikhism as a religion. At the same time, you have an identity of being a male. You have an identity of possibly being a father. You have an identity of possibly being a husband. You have an identity of possibly working for a particular company in a particular designation. You possibly might also have multiple other identities which could be with relate to your village, with respect to your nationality. All these identities work parallelly, and you
Right,
keep
sir.
moving from one identity to another. So for example, if today you are in this class, you are a student of migration and diaspora studies. That's your identity. As soon as you
Sure.
move and go to your office, you would be whatever your designation is. When you go home, you might be a father or a husband or a son. These are all
Sure.
multiple identities which parallelly work, and you keep moving within these identities.
Very true, sir. Sir, to have the PPTs of both the lectures, can you share the contact where we can send? I
Yes,
can send
Gurpreet,
my.
you can send me an email at I am in the chat window. I am putting my email ID. You
Right, sir.
can hang on. I'm putting my email ID in the chat window. You can send me an email, and I can. Oh, sorry. Hang on. It's not direct meeting group chat. That's my email ID. You can send me an
Right, sir.
email, and I'll send you the PPT. In fact,
True, sir.
Ujjwal already wrote to me. Also, all this thing is streamed on the YouTube channel. You can go and check that out also, but I can send you the PPT, not an issue at all. Plus,
So kind, sir.
if you have SLMs or whenever you get SLMs, self-learning modules, all these things are there. For example, today's PPT is outside the SLM. I just took certain part of the SLM because I thought the SLM was not explaining caste in the way, one should explain. So I picked up things from outside. Okay, Prashil
Right.
is saying, sir, is there any difference between jati and caste, or only we use alternate form? So, Prashil, the varna and jati are now equivalent to caste in a particular way. You can read a little bit. Why don't you just Google it and see? They are not overlapping, but they, kind of interplace. So today we do not talk about varna and jati. We typically talk about caste. So we talk about he's a Brahmin or he's a Kshatriya, which is actually a Varna, not a caste. Prashil? Prashil is there. Okay. Okay. Any other question? Abha, were you able to find any paper on religion? I actually didn't get the time to look.
No, sir, I haven't been able to
Okay, I will
just check it out.
because
I'll also do it, sir.
because our next unit is on multiculturalism, which we take next Saturday. So in this week, hopefully, I'll be able to get the time to have a look if I can find a paper. But if you do just a basic Google search, a lot of information comes your way. Again, it depends on what you want to pick up, because everything is so nuanced that you start going into one and then you go into the other thing. So typically try and focus on your search. Otherwise, you can keep browsing till eternity, and you have to always, whenever you pick up information on the net, always cross check, because remember, the net is an anonymous and a virtual medium. Anybody can write anything and get away with it. It's like a WhatsApp university. Always cross verify, because there are all kinds of misinformation which is put out there, a lot of ideological aligned information. So do not just pick up information as it is on the face value. Please cross verify it, because otherwise you can be absolutely wrong in terms of your information. There was a very interesting case study of Wikipedia, where the news item said a bored Chinese housewife created a whole Wikipedia entity on the royalty in Russia, and there were such authentic articles that everybody started using that and quoting into their academic studies, till such time somebody cross-checked and verified and found out that 30 or more articles on Russian royalty were all fake. So you need to be very careful. Okay, so in case there is no other question, we have reached our time. Have a nice weekend and a wonderful week ahead. We meet each other again next Saturday at 3 o'clock with the next unit, which is multiculturalism. Yes, Gurpreet ji. Good to see
Right.
you.
Sir, on behalf of all the students, I convey my regards and thanks.
The pleasure is all mine. It's a pleasure to interact every Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
sir.
Abhay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye.